Hi, great to have a chance to speak to you again. Today we're going to have a little explore of Matthew chapter 7, and we're starting off with our theme verse for this week, which is actually verse 1 of the chapter, and it says this: "Do not judge and criticize and condemn others, so that you may not be judged and criticized and condemned yourselves." And that's from the Amplified Bible. I quite like the way the Message puts it as well, so I'll read that to you. Don't pick on people, jump on their failures, criticize their faults, unless, of course, you want the same treatment. This is a really challenging verse, and it goes to show really that sometimes when we look at the Bible, we really can't just pick a verse out and base everything on one verse. We have to look at what's gone on before, what's gone on afterwards. If you just try to live this verse by itself without thinking about what it really means, it'll be a nightmare. I mean, let's face it, we all make judgments all the time. Is this verse saying that those judgments are wrong? I mean, what would it look like if we didn't exercise our judgment? Don't just bung things away. I know exactly where they are. I'll get them now. Ray, you're never going to guess what's happened. You're never going to guess what happened. A foreign prince has been in contact with me, wants to give me £1 million. So I've just sent him all our bank details and passwords so he can pay the money in. I'm so excited. What? Come on. Matthew chapter 7 isn't saying give up on making common sense decisions, give up on being smart. It's not saying you won't have to make judgment calls in life, because we all know that of course you will. I mean, of course you're going to have to make judgment calls. So what is it saying? Let's have a little bit of a think. Don't be hypocritical. That word comes from somebody who puts on a mask to act. Don't be like that. Don't pretend there's nothing wrong with you when you're having a go at somebody else. Don't judge somebody else for doing something wrong as if you're perfect. The Pharisees did that all the time. And it really, really made Jesus quite frustrated with them. And he calls them out for it on so many occasions. In John 7, verse 24, Jesus has been trapped by the Pharisees, and they sort of say, you healed somebody on the Sabbath. That's work, that is. And Jesus says to them, you don't really get the law, do you? You're not judging fairly or righteously. You've got all these rules to make sure you keep the 10 Commandments, but you don't really understand the 10 Commandments at all if you think that God's got a problem with somebody being healed on a Sabbath day. What is wrong with you? So don't be hypocritical. The second one, remember that you're going to be judged by the standard that you set by the people around you. In verse 2 of chapter 7, it talks about measure for measure. And the rabbis in Jesus' audience would have really listened in on this, because there was this idea at the time that God judged using two measures of justice on one hand and mercy on the other. And of course, everybody really wants the mercy one, don't they? Nobody wants the judgment one. So as soon as Jesus said this, they'd have started paying attention. But it's going to challenge them, because if they're just seeking to please the law and not be merciful, then Jesus is saying to them, that's how you're going to be judged. You're going to be judged that way. And Jesus told them on many occasions, nobody can be perfect through the law, because it's just impossible to do that. So remember, the way that you judge is often thrown back at you. Imagine being in a household where instead of judgment, there was just grace and mercy and a sort of love that covered over some of the things we do wrong that, they're not really going to destroy the world or ruin our lives. Remember that God is the true judge. Think about the illustration that Jesus gives in this chapter, where he talks about somebody trying to take a speck out of their brother's eye when they've got this massive plank in their own eye. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Jesus really kind of gets people's imagination going with this kind of image that they've got. But that's what we're all like. We're all got a speck or a plank in our eye. We're not the true judge. Jesus is. And that's fantastic news, because not only is he a righteous judge, you can't bribe him, he can't be corrupted. Not only is he authoritative God. He's got the real authority to do whatever he needs to do. He's also gentle and merciful to those who ask him for forgiveness. So you couldn't really ask for a better judge. So don't judge unrighteously and unfairly. Instead, treat people the way that Jesus encourages us to in verse 12 of this chapter, where he says, treat other people the way you'd have them treat you.